All right, we are live for the Friday edition of the Mike and Mario Show. Back at it one more time and excited to connect as always, Mario. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Mike, and you?
I'm doing good. Let me cut off my I hear myself. I got a little bit of a here. Give me 1 second here. Let me figure out where I'm streaming at. But other than that, I'm doing fine. Excited to be back as always, man. Looking
Yeah.
forward to connecting with you. Lots of things unfolding as always. And I can't seem to find where I'm straight where the audio is coming from on my end. And so let me see. I had to mute. Give me 1 second. Last minute difficulties as always. Let me see if I can figure out where this audio is coming from. But
Goon is,
everything is going well, man. Everything's going well. Excited to
Goon is
speak.
asking why I don't have a British accent.
Yeah,
Because I'm originally from Brazil and I went to university in the States. I've been here for over 30 years, but I haven't really lost my accent. So that's why.
yeah, and you speak how many languages again?
About five, I think, yeah.
About 5 languages.
Portuguese, French, English, German, a bit of German, and
Yeah.
Italian.
Yeah, I speak two, English and Spanglish. My Spanish ain't all that good, but I can understand better. I can communicate.
Yeah.
The
So,
Western education system. Okay, so let's dive right in. So hope everyone's doing well. As always, for those who are plugged in, definitely hit the thumbs up button, show your support for the channels, and feel free to throw out some thoughts, ideas, suggestions. When we get to the Q&A portion, we'll definitely try to jump on those as best as we can. But we have a lot of articles here, and the goal is to try to get through all of them, share our 2 cents on them, try to make sense of what's happening, and just continue to encourage people to really pay attention as the clock is ticking, things are unwinding. So the first article, let's jump into this, man. The BRICS, of course, the BRICS is going to be primary topic moving forward for the next several weeks. And so as of now, the last time we spoke, the primary headlines mentioned 19 countries. And so all of a sudden, as of today or yesterday, this article mentioned 20 countries, and the full list I haven't been able to find, but yet we're going to find out more as we move ahead. And what is most interesting is this little visual that I put together here. And of course, it's not official yet, but it's something to play around with just because it doesn't surprise me one bit. Because we were talking about a possible G7 nation, which one it would be. And it looks like it might be perhaps France wanting to hold hands with the BRICS these days. And so I thought this is just a good way to kick things off. But this is piggybacking on this article here. Why Emmanuel Macron wants to go to the BRICS summit in South Africa. And so, of course, I have my suspicions and thoughts about that. I'm sure you do as well. But what was the first thing that came to your mind when you saw this headline?
well, first of all, I saw another story a few days ago, and it wasn't official. They're still asking for confirmation. So we have to take it with a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't surprise me if the French were trying to hedge their bets. The French have always been pretty. They've looked after their interests quite a bit. You know, they will do whatever it takes to look after their interests. They were against the war in Iraq in 2003, and that's where the term cheese eating surrender monkeys came from. But looking back, they did the right thing because that was an illegal war. And the other thing that in my opinion, if this is true and Macron is going to attend the BRICS summit, I think it's in August in South Africa, that would be really significant. It would be almost akin to when the French started asking the US Treasury for gold back in the late 60s, early 70s. And that led to a run on the Treasury's gold. The British started asking for their gold. And then Nixon defaulted. He closed the gold window temporarily, and it's still closed 52 years later.
Yeah.
So I think it could be it's a little different, but it could really be something significant that a Western country is looking into the BRICS.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that more, just reading through this article here, it looks like the initial request that was sent by the French government to put out a filler for Macron being able to attend the summit. It caught South Africa by surprise to where Cyril Ramaphosa, their leader there, I guess had to go back and check with his counterparts to see what their thoughts would be about having Macron attend. And as of right now, it says something about keeping it politically correct. They didn't say no, or they say yes. They just said that we'll try to figure this out or something like that. And so I bet it caught them by surprise, because my suspicion is that, like you mentioned, like it could be the door opener for more bigger countries to want to join, similar to how the gold rush started back in the day, which could be a genuine movement on his part, or it could be him being used as a Trojan horse, sort of say, to infiltrate the BRICS meetings, to kind of spy things out, to see what's happening behind the scenes outside of what we already suspect and already know. So it could go either way, but it is a definite shock. Now, in your regards there, if France really does attend this summit, if he gets invited and he does go, will that give more of the G7 countries the confidence to want to also pursue and consider it as well, to where this could be the flood opening up to where more nations decide to join? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, one other country I guess we could see lean towards the BRICS is Italy, because there's a lot of Chinese investment in Italy. So yeah, I wouldn't put it past them either. So France and then Italy. And there were rumors a few months ago that the UK wanted to join BRICS, but somehow I don't see that happening right now. So yeah, that's we'll have to see. I mean, I think that summit starts in August, so just over 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, so definitely between now and then, we're going to hear more information about other countries. And so, speaking of other countries wanting to join, and so let me just share with you a couple more things. So Bangladesh wants to join as well, and so it just gives a little bit of good demographics about the trade and things of that nature. And then we have officially Egypt. We all suspected it because it was rumors floating out there, but officially Egypt has applied to join the BRICS. So more and more nations are joining, on top of the 20 that are on the fence as well. So time will tell where this goes, but this definitely doesn't fare well for the current monetary structure, all centered around the dollar, because all these countries are looking to make these changes so that they can provide options for themselves other than just the primary one they have. So, so piggyback even more. So here's just another little headline here of events unfolding right now where people are looking for options and alternatives. And so the Asian Clearing Union to reportedly launch swift alternative in this month amid accelerating de-dollarization push. So there's about nine nations or so, of which 2 or 3, as you mentioned, are fairly large, and the other ones are really relatively small. But once again, they're trying to diversify themselves. And it looks like a lot of these articles I read talk about, or that they're using sanctions as one of the driving forces to want to, make these changes out of fear of the backlash from the Western Hemisphere in reference to the dollar. And so this officially, launches this month. And so this is one of many other events unfolding, but does it surprise you one bit?
No, and the other argument from the dollar milkshake guys is that these countries are small, insignificant, but when you keep adding them up, I think there's an experiment or something that if you start letting a drop of water into a stadium at a certain rate, it's very slow, but at one point it just floods the whole thing, and I think that's what this is all about. All these countries, we're up to 20 right now, and that number is probably going to grow a lot more. That's going to take a lot of withdraw a lot of demand for treasuries. And we know that in the next 10 years, the national debt is probably going to go over 50, maybe even 60 trillion. So who's going to be buying that? Well, the only way to attract domestic investors or even foreign investors is higher rates. So that's not going to help. And so that's where we are. And I expect them to continue to buy gold as well, like they did last year.
Yeah, as you're talking about throwing out a large number about who's going to buy that, and the first thing that came to mind is the Fed's balance sheet, because I remember Jerome Powell mentioned it several years ago, talking about what's too high, what's too much for the Fed's balance sheet, and he made it seem as if we haven't even seen how high it could go if need be. So I'm thinking wow, that wouldn't be good for the dollar itself, but doesn't surprise me one bit.
20 trillion. I mean, and but the thing is, Powell, I think he was asked recently, or I don't know exactly when, about
Mhm.
that. Uh, and he said the Fed is not prepared to just finance all this debt. But I think he said that just to make him sound tough. But when push comes to shove, they probably have to do it. And maybe you want to look at the Fed's balance sheet now. We're
Yeah,
talking
I
about the
agree.
Fed's balance sheet because I've noticed that since middle of February, the balance sheet has gone nowhere in terms of if you move your yeah, the level we're now at 83 83 88. That's 8
Mhm.
trillion 388 billion. It's the same, pretty much the same level if you go to the left to
Mhm.
middle of February. Yeah, you see, it hasn't really
Yeah.
changed. We've gone up. We've gone up about 4 billion in the
Uh-huh.
last 4 months, uh, net. So the Fed is not really tightening there.
Yeah.
So and then I've looked as well at the balance sheet of the Bank of England. They don't
Mhm.
have charts like that. They're not as transparent.
Yeah.
But I wrote down some numbers back in December 18th, 2019. And why that date? Well, because that was just before 2020. Uh,
Mhm.
the the Bank of England had 444 billion 997 million in QE assets, and now it still has 823 billion pounds. And the top was like around the end of 2021 where they had 894 billion. So their balance sheet is still up 85% since before 2020. And that's why I think we still have high high prices, what people call inflation in the UK.
Yeah.
They printed so much money, and the Bank of England forgets that we don't have the major reserve currency, so people are not going to demand pounds as much as dollars. It's one of the reasons why the Fed is able to do so much QE is because
Mhm.
it's still got the major reserve currency, and I think that's why the UK has got an inflation or price problem, and it's not going to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I sent you this here. When I saw that 13, I'm like, wow, that's serious. But then I'm like, how in the world is the US 2.4? And this is according to Trueflation and how they measure their measurements. But I'm thinking like, wow, like double digits for real. That's serious.
well, the UK is fairly accurate, I would say, because the RPI is around that level, the retail price index.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the US one at 2.4, maybe that's no, I don't think that's very reflective of how much prices are rising in the US. I mean,
Not
you
at
probably
all. Not at all. But it's just interesting how once again they can throw out a number and everybody runs with it, and we're expected to just accept it and just move on with our business. And they're telling us that things are getting better, but in actuality, we know they're not. What else? Okay, so for those who are checking in, definitely hit the thumbs up button, show your support for the channel. We're gonna get to the Q&A after we get through a couple more headlines here, but let's talk about. Okay, so there's lots of things to talk about. So were you surprised by this past week's pause? And is this pause? This is is that pause the signal to the upcoming pivot? Because they led us to believe that there's still going to be some more hikes on the table, but then why even bother to pause if all the indicators are already lagging behind? So, what are you thinking about that? What was your thoughts?
Yeah, we're talking for those who don't know about the pause. It's the Fed's pause. They
Yeah.
paused raising rates, so it's been a bit of a gradual move because if you remember well, they were raising rates by 50 basis points. Then they went down to 25, and now they've paused. But at the same time, they wanted to seem tough, and they said Powell said that the for the July meeting, which must be towards the end of July, he said that it's a live meeting, which means that they could raise rates. But yeah, I think they don't really know what's going on and they are concerned about things and that's why they pause. But at the same time, they're trying to tell the markets that they want to be tough.
Hmm.
But I know it hasn't translated into much higher gold and silver prices, but I've noticed the dollar versus the fiat currencies is dropping quite sharply. So I would expect that, yeah, it could be the first sign of a pivot, But at the same time, they keep saying, "Oh, we could raise rates again. We're going to stay elevated for a long time." But I could see a major crisis again in the next 6 months, like we saw in March
Yeah,
with the banks.
yeah. Headline you sent me about just the month-to-month data is a distraction from the real indicators, which show that there's already extreme recessionary pressures going on now, and this could be a part of why they decided to come out with this, this so-called pause on their part, just because they're not wanting to admit that things are as bad as they really are. And so, what better way to cover that up by saying that we're going to pause and reassess and just see how things go from here, because we're making good progress with our with our objectives of bringing inflation down. Then they come out with some bogus figures at 4%, as if like that people really believe that. So yeah, so here's just a little headline here that you mentioned, and it talks about just when we get here, the unemployment, is ticking up, and of course retail sales is trending down, and the overall ISM and stuff like that is not really showing anything of confidence as well. So everything points to a recession. And factor in what's happening in Europe as well. So, like, the U.S. is right behind the Europe with the recessionary stuff. So, what else you think about this?
Yeah, jobless claims came out yesterday. It was at 262,000 weekly jobless claims, and
Yeah.
earlier this year and last year it got below 200, which is quite healthy for the labor market. But you have to go, if you strip out what happened during the lockdowns, because it distorted all the numbers. If you go
Hmm.
back before lockdown, the levels we're at now, we haven't seen that since 2017.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think it's significant that jobless claims is they're rising, and I think the economy is definitely slowing down. Even though we hear from the Fed and politicians and economists on Wall Street that they expect a soft landing and everything's going to be fine, but I think that the problem is the debt. There's so much debt, and
Hmm.
that's going to crowd out the private sector, and by that I mean the government debt, and even corporate and personal, household debt. I think
Hmm.
it's just gone over 100 trillion in the U.S. And I also noticed that if you go on the U.S. debt clock, yeah, that's the first time it's gone over 100 trillion. Unfunded liabilities is jumped like 3.5 trillion in the last 2 weeks. So that's what's going to hurt the economy, I think,
Yeah.
because yeah, it's just the debt is growing. Yeah, if you look there,
Yeah.
right in the right there, 100 trillion 527 billion. It's right, uh,
Oh yeah.
middle left.
Middle
Yeah,
left.
yeah, and then the unfunded
Yeah. Yeah.
liabilities. I think it was around 188 about 2 weeks ago, and now it's 191 trillion. So you
Yeah.
add that to the total debt, that's almost
Whew.
300 trillion. And you look at the GDP, it's 26 trillion. So it's unfunded liabilities plus debt. It's more than 10 times the economy. I guess
Mm.
it's akin to someone earning $100,000 and having you know a $1 million mortgage or
Yeah.
$1 million in debt. If they lose that job, they're in trouble.
Yeah, you're in trouble if you don't got a printing press or access to a couple
Yeah,
some digits on a keyboard that you can transfer and move liabilities around.
yeah,
And speaking of which, you mentioned the possibility of another event within the next 6 months, and I think one event that everyone is paying attention to more and more is the commercial real estate, just because more people are deciding to hold off on paying for some of those debt liabilities that they are not able to take care of and manage anymore. So here's just something from headlines that regional banks scramble to unload commercial real estate loans, fearing a new crisis. And so this is something that is sweeping through our country here. And to show you how bad it is, here's a little headline from a week ago, but this is just something that made headlines because of how large this is. But it says owner of two San Francisco largest hotels, Hilton, Union Square, and Park 55, stops paying payments on 725 million loan due in November because the crime-ridden city path recovery remains clouded. So you got them walking away from major real estate properties, and
Yeah,
he's not the only one. So,
there's one here in the UK I saw this week. It's in Canary Wharf, which is like
mhm,
the financial one of the financial districts in London, and it's the address is 20 Churchill Place, Canary
mhm,
Wharf, and I think it was a Hong Kong conglomerate, like Hong Kong businessman bought it in 2017 for
mhm,
410 million pounds, and he's defaulted on it. And now Lloyd's Bank is trying to sell it on to pay the mortgage, and they put it on the market for 250 million pounds. So the guy bought it, and the mortgage is 265 million. So yeah, it's happening here too, the commercial real estate, and I think also the residential real estate here. Mortgages are zooming
mhm.
up, which is not a good thing. And yeah, right now, as we speak, the 2 year gilt yield is almost at 5%. So
Mhm.
I think we could reach 6%. And in the UK, we don't have a 30-year fixed mortgage. Most people do it for 2 or 5 years. Very
Yeah,
few do it for 10 years. So there's about over I think 1.4 million mortgages coming for renewal this year. So it's going to be a big problem as well in the residential area.
yeah, yeah. Another thing about what's coming due, like with the commercial real estate here, 1.5 trillion, 1.5 trillion of commercial real estate property debt that will be due for payment in the next 18 months. So this is going to be, yeah, this could be something major. Of course, the banks have to see this. Federal Reserve have to see this. They know what's at stake here. And so I saw something about, I should have grabbed it, but Fed Waller talked about about having they can always create the tools needed to kind of
Oh,
backstop and help
he
out
means
with these.
cash.
Huh?
By tool, he means cash, right?
Yeah, ultimately that's what it boils down to.
But maybe you could show that. I don't know. Have you showed that chart of the Fed's BTFP program? It shows,
Let me. Okay, this. Okay,
yeah, that you
yeah,
see
that's okay.
that BTFP. That's the bank term financing P, whatever it is.
A new
That's
tool.
yeah, that's when SVB went bust. You see,
Uh huh.
they're bailing out the regional banks, and regional banks, I think they have 60 to 70% of all the commercial real estate loans. So
Hmm.
it's still still not out of the woods. These banks.
Right. Right. So ultimately speaking, the banks are still looking to take advantage of this emergency lending facility because they're having issues on the back end. And so right now in the mainstream news, the banking sector is it's calm, it's cool, collective, it's not being talked about. But these charts show here that they're still scrambling for funds to prop
Yeah,
themselves up. So yeah, ain't no tightening here. It's still expansion.
yeah.
What else? Let me
So
keep.
we
Okay,
got
so
some
we got it.
questions.
Go ahead.
Just
All right,
go to
what we
the
got? Okay, let's
questions.
get some questions then.
Yeah,
We
because
go to some questions then.
I've seen some questions here, and just wanted to
Highlight,
yeah,
highlight at Manico64 or at Rethinking a Dollar so to stand out, and then I can
yeah.
grab it.
I mean, first I want to thank John Lord for his super chat. He says, "Good evening, Mike and Mary. Looking forward to another great episode. Um, great work, guys. Much appreciated." And William MCPD, he's asking about platinum. Do you have any view on the platinum market?
Me personally, I haven't
Yeah,
ventured into the platinum scene, but yeah, then again, I know it is highly favored by a lot of people, and is obviously is doing quite well.
yeah,
Market is less spoofed than the gold and silver market, so yeah,
yeah.
anything precious and real, get a hold of it.
Yeah, I mean, recently platinum broke out of a strong resistance, and I think it went up above $1,100, and now it's come back down to just around 1,000. I still think it's a good metal to have. It's a precious metal. It's
Hmm.
also a industrial commodity, and yeah, I still favor commodities. So what it looks like technically has happened here. It broke out and it's come back to retest the breakout. That's how I
Hmm.
see it. I don't have any platinum though. I stick to gold and silver in terms of precious metals. And we
Yeah.
got quite a question from low blood pressure. He asked me, "Where's my next vacation? Am I going back to Italy?" Well, low blood pressure. Yeah, there. I don't know if you've seen it there. Not going to
Uh,
Italy this year. We're gonna have a vacation in England. They call it a staycation. And why? Well, because it's easier to travel in this country with Rudy. Rudy's still a puppy, so we booked a hotel where you can take dogs, which is nice. So yeah, we're gonna do a staycation.
all right. Here's a question from UK. I'm gonna try to get caught up with the questions. It says UK Financial says, what do you both think of this possible European bank hack that is due today? I've seen some videos. Some thought. I've seen people comment on it. Once again, it's one of the things. Until it happens, it's all just we're all guessing. Nobody knows for sure. So yeah. At this current moment, everybody who's tuned in, not to have more than you're willing to lose in the hands of somebody else at this current time, just because there's no promises, no guarantees, and during reset type of environments, there are no promises may not be fulfilled. So that's my thought on it. But what do you think?
I don't know what I haven't heard of this story. Which European bank exactly is that?
No, so there's reports out here, especially on Twitter, of some. I think it's a pro-Russian hacker. So I saw three different entities saying that in 48 hours they're going to bring down the European banking system, and then it's going to trickle over to the SWIFT system. Then it's going to go here to the U.S. banking system. And so, other than this little spooky video out there, that was what people are referring to, or what I seen, and people circulated, retweeted everywhere, and I'm assuming that's what they're using as
Oh, I've
the
seen. Well,
primary focus of this little stuff.
if you guys have been stacking, you shouldn't be worried about it. And if you don't keep too much fiat currency in the bank, that's why we do it. But I don't know if this is true or if it's just scaremongering. So
Right.
Jimmy Mendy said something here in French. He says, Macron, le dernier espoir du vieux continent. He says Macron is the best hope for the old continent. So that's what he said that in French. Anyway,
Man, I don't see that. Okay, so here's a super chat here. It says the thunder sound says see California and Florida homeowners insurance market dropping policies and raising premiums like crazy. The insurance will be unaffordable before the mortgage, but the insurance ISA requirements for a mortgage. But the insurance ISA requirement for a mortgage. Homeowners insurance market dropping policies. I'm not sure about Florida. I saw that. I think state auto, and there's been one or two insurance carriers in California that decided to not accept any new policies moving forward due to the climate concerns and stuff like that. But I know Florida was on that same kick there. But it doesn't surprise me because
yeah,
and what we're witnessing right now, in my opinion, is the merger of the public-private partnerships between the World Economic Forum and governments and private entities. They're literally collaborating in real time with this woke stuff, and so it doesn't surprise me whatsoever when you see all this foolishness and craziness happening right now, and especially when it comes to insurance, because that's another way for them to take away property rights at somehow, some way by making it unaffordable. And so, don't be surprised one bit.
low blood pressure has a question here on my chat. Who sells the
Okay.
COMEX silver contracts to an individual? Who's on the other side? Well, you could low blood pressure. You could have an account with a futures broker and sell silver futures, and then someone on the other side. It could be J.P. Morgan. It could be another uh, retail investor. They buy the long position, and you have until a certain date to get out of the front month. I think right now, it's probably a July future. So if you don't get out of your position by July, you could be called upon to deliver the silver. So that's how it works. Anyone can trade on COMEX. It's just a matter of rolling to the next month the futures. That's how they do it. You see, uh, let's say JP Morgan sells 1,000 silver futures for July. Uh, when the 1st of July comes, before that, they'll just roll until the September contract. That's how it works. So they don't have to deliver or and the long position as well. A lot of people go long silver because they just want to have exposure to the price. So they make sure as well that they roll over their position to the September when the delivery date starts for July. So how do they roll it? Well, let's say I'm long 100 silver futures, July silver futures. So before the end of June, I will sell the 100 July and buy 100 September. So you roll over. So that's how they keep the game going. They keep rolling that. And there's very little delivery of actual metal. And that's how they play the game, and they influence the price. And
I
that's
think
why that's how they
I
can
think that's changing. No, go
that's
ahead,
how
sorry.
that's how they can throw thousands of you know hundreds of millions of tons into the market, and they just keep rolling it.
Yeah. Now I don't follow the futures market as much at all, but I guess a lot of this started off with being able to manipulate things in hopes of just having exposure to the markets. But now isn't it the case where people are wanting more physical possession of some of these contracts now? So that it's kind of like a flipping of
Yeah,
somewhat.
yeah. I mean, the COMEX, gold and silver, and all other contracts as well, these futures exchanges, they don't like people taking delivery, not just
Hmm.
of gold and silver, but also of treasury bonds, because there are treasury futures, of oil futures. They just want people to keep rolling. It just sets the price, and that's how they get away with it. But I think in the in China on their exchanges, if you're trading silver or gold, you have to show that you are a commercial entity that has
Hmm.
actually a physical metal behind it. So yeah, that's how it works. I mean, I don't follow so much the futures market anymore, but I was a futures broker for 20 years, so I know how it works.
Yeah. Good deal. Let me see here. Let's see. I missed some questions here. Let me see if you see something. Uh, what is it? Okay, here's what is it? What is it? It says Rolf says, what is it? What is that called when corporations merge with the state?
Fascism.
Yeah, corruption at its highest form. Oh man. What
or,
else we got
or
here?
crony capitalism.
Crony capitalism. Yeah. What else? Anything else? Let me see. What else is happening out here? Any other questions? Did we cover all our topics, our articles?
Uh,
Let me see. Did we grab it? Oh no, here's another. And so that the RFK,
oh yeah, that's
um,
really interesting.
that's
Yeah,
very interesting. The
that was
fact that he
good.
said
Yeah.
that. I didn't see the interview, but the
Well,
fact that he's concerned with his life. But
there's a clip there on someone put just that part, and it's interesting. He said that he knows that he could be in trouble, and he's not afraid of it. He's not afraid of getting killed by the CIA. So I've never seen a politician say that,
yeah,
because I, I think Trump wanted to do a lot more, but he didn't because he was threatened probably.
yeah. And on top of that, he's not really a politician. He's a
Oh,
lawyer, so he's
well,
attempting to enter into that realm, and he knows
yeah.
what's at stake.
Oh, yeah. But it's interesting what he said about his uncle is
Hmm.
that he was there at the inauguration. He was 6 years old, and
Hmm.
2 days before, President Eisenhower gave that famous speech about not allowing the military industrial complex to grow too
Hmm.
much, the threat of the military industrial
Hmm.
complex. So he said that his uncle wanted all the troops, all the advisors to come home from Vietnam because
Hmm.
there were 75 dead Americans in 1963, and he said that's too many. So he said, we're going to bring all Americans home from
Hmm.
Vietnam by the beginning of 1965. And he said 1 month later,
Cancel this contract. Whew.
yeah, Dallas, November 22nd. Nightmare Elm Street, wasn't it? That's where
So
his limo was being driven down Elm Street.
yeah.
That's
Now,
why
so whew.
the Nightmare on Elm Street.
And so for me, that's more than enough proof to go. If you try to go against the establishment, whatever it's called, if you really try to stand up and make change, things like that happen. And that's why I'm concerned with our political season. Like nobody is really talking to that
Yeah.
level of
And
type of change. They want to make things great, yada yada. But systemic change is much harder to accomplish.
he said that the CIA is the instrument of the military industrial complex to foment all the chaos and the wars, to keep them making loads of money. And have you noticed that? I mean, the last war the U.S. won was World War II. The U.S. doesn't fight wars anymore to win; they just fight wars
They
to
they
make money.
start them
Make money.
they start them and prolong them for their own interests, and they
Yeah.
steal the
Well,
resources. And
yeah. Well, and then the military-industrial complex makes trillions as well. I mean, Afghanistan, 20-year war.
yeah, and we know better for it. And then China swoops in and try to make peace and redo the country. What else? Ridiculous. No more. I don't see any question. Let me see here. World is fighting back.
Local pressure is saying, will RFK Jr. bring back the silver certificate? I'm not sure. But one thing about the Federal Reserve, because JFK, after they tried the Bay of Pigs invasion and he refused to send U.S. troops to help, he wanted to get rid of the CIA. And I think the financing arm of the CIA is the Federal Reserve. So
Yeah. So that's wishful thinking there, but
maybe you silver, period. You don't need certificates, low blood pressure. You
right,
just need, constitutional silver coins to circulate. That's the best thing, I would say. No
right.
paper.
It'd be good for a candidate to talk about gold and silver as a part of his platform moving forward. The importance of having it, encouraging Americans right now to go out and get some as an insurance against all the craziness and the Federal Reserve. Like that'll be some talk that I would really get behind because that's right in alignment with what I'm already trying to preach my dang self. So, but of course, we're talking about a gold back currency. That's what we're talking about, or making Bitcoin legal tender.
Well, I think I heard RFK Jr. speaking about, I think it was on Twitter with Elon Musk. And he said, he mentioned that his uncle wanted to bring back, the silver certificates and even gold certificates, which I didn't know about. But maybe he knows more than I do. Of course, he was closer to his uncle, and he said that he wanted to do that so that the Fed could manipulate things as they do with fiat currency. So I really think he's aware of gold and silver and how
Yeah.
important it is.
So even Trump, prior to him running for president back in the day, was a gold guy, talked about how they're destroying the dollar, yada, yada, yada. Then he gets in, becomes president. Now his lingo changes. He wants to, to ease more and print more and do this more. And so it's like, okay, one thing before and one thing after when you get in. So that's one of my concerns is once you get inside and you realize everybody around you, your advisors are all part of the banking cartel and things of that nature. It's like, okay, you can only do so much before you're outnumbered. And
So I
we all
guess,
know presidents don't really run things. Go ahead.
even RFK Jr. then could have the same problem if you were to get elected.
Correct. You can start off well with good intentions, but you get in and realize you'll be against a big monster, and that's all she wrote. And one by one, things change. It says, if we are all slaves to the note, does that mean the Federal Reserve are slave owners? I wouldn't say Federal Reserve. I would say that the central banking model in of itself is a debt-based slavery-style system that uses national currency. They privatize national currencies at their own at our expense for their benefit, and governments are subjected to it as well. Go ahead.
The slave owners are the people who own and control the central banks, the very wealthy, multi-generational European and American families that have been around for hundreds of years, that own a lot of land. They're the slave holders.
Right. Yeah, we all know who those families are or who they could be. So, all right, we're about that 40-minute mark. What we got coming up? Anything else happening for the rest of this month or next between now and next week that you're aware of that's worth keeping an eye on?
Yeah. On Thursday, we have the Bank of England meeting. They are expected to raise rates because we have our CPI or prices. I hate saying inflation because it's not really inflation; it's price rises. It's still out of control. So that's on Thursday. So that would be interesting to look at. But nothing really that I'm aware of in the next week. But yeah.
Yeah. So other than that, so real quick, just for those who may not, because I was talking about this the other day. Outside the BRICS summits, there is another summit taking place right now as we speak, and it happens to be the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. And just real quick, I want to highlight something. I was thumbing through this, and four of their primary themes for this conference, and so it ends tomorrow. And the first one on here, let me just bring this up. It says the first theme is, quote, the economic order responding to the challenges of the time. And it talks about the government's decision, including remaining interconnected between the SCO, the BRICS, and the EAEU. And the session's participants note that a new system of international settlements on both bilateral and multilateral basis should be created at a matter of priority. So they're right now talking about alternatives as well. So they're talking about that right now at St. Petersburg in Russia. So that's something to be aware of. And then also we have the World Economic Forum. Their meeting is at the end of this month. And they're talking about the changes they're trying to bring to the world in not so good way. So everybody's meeting these days. So
just going back to the SPIEF conference in St. Petersburg, that's where Vladimir Putin, I think it was in 2021, he made a speech there. He always makes a speech at SPIEF, and he said that the dollar was based on mythical values, and the whole system was not sustainable, the fiat currency system. And I think that's the way I'm not saying the BRICS are perfect. I'm not telling you to invest in those BRIC countries, but I think they're trying to move away from this fiat currency speculative system that we have, because a lot of these BRIC countries, they have a lot of natural resources. They want to develop their economy. They don't want to just have people borrowing and spending and speculating. They want a balanced economy, in my opinion. So it will be interesting to see what he's going to make a keynote speech. That's what I meant. He will make a keynote speech probably this weekend. I don't know when that ends, and it will be interesting to see what he says.
So he had the first speech. Kazakhstan had the second speech. President Xi did a video conference, and another major leader did another video conference as well. So it's ultimately the same BRICS nations. They're having just a pre-conference. So, and the U.S. wasn't invited. So.
Well, actually, in 2021, a lot of Western journalists, economists, business people would go to St. Petersburg. But I think now with what's going on in the Ukraine, they've kind of boycotted the SPIEF conference, even though they might have been invited.
Yeah. So there's a list of all the attendees, and I was looking, and lots of nations are there, and it said the USA at the very bottom. So I don't know, how much coverage, but we won't hear about it on Western media, put it like that. So you got to go to these sources for yourself to get it. So, but other than that, we know what's happening. It's going to be an interesting summer. Get your weight up. Just enjoy the summer. Get your weight up. Do everything you can to better yourself and to become less dependent upon the system in and of itself. Whether it's a bank attack, anything, hopefully you're taking some precautionary measures, knowing that at any moment anything can happen. So other than that, appreciate you guys for joining us. Hit the thumbs up button, show some love, and we will see you guys next week, same time, same place. Peace.